So thank you everyone for coming to another Reltio community show. We have a really great topic today and feature, and it's called leveraging pre-trained machine learning models for efficient entity resolution, or Match IQ pre-trained ML matching. We have Ansh Kanwar. He's a senior VP of technology and a field CTO here at Reltio. Ansh, glad to have you on again.
I was happy
Welcome
to be
back.
here, Chris.
Great. Next slide. As usual, let's just keep yourself on mute. All questions should be asked in chat, or feel free to take yourself off mute, and I will ask as many questions as I can. Sometimes we can't get to them all, but I will be pushing those out to the community. This is being recorded, so my hope is to get this out later today or tomorrow, and we'll be in the usual places. Next slide. And so we have a couple of events coming up. One is today's on leveraging pre-trained machine learning models for efficient entity resolution. And then we're going to take a couple of weeks off. I'll be traveling on vacation. So we'll get back to it on August 23rd from foundation to future, harnessing MDM for democratic data governance. We have a few more shows that will be coming up that I'm scheduling now, but they're not shown here yet. I'm still trying to get the authors and speakers and things like that lined up for September. Next slide. And as most of you know, Reltio is sponsoring a conference called Data Driven, and I'll push the link into the comments or chats here shortly, but it's a modern data management conference, October 3rd through 5th here in Dallas, Texas. We hope that you can come. We have lots of great speakers, keynotes, and everything else. Really excited about this. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let Ansh kick it off. So Ansh, go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Hey, everybody. It's always exciting to be part of the community. I also want to point out a couple of Reltians who are also on the call, and they can help sort of dive into detail on any questions that may come up. So I see Suchin, you're on here. If you want to turn your camera at some point, Suchin heads up Suchin is one of our product managers, and he heads up the match side of the equation. And of course, our head of product management, Venki Subramanian, is here. So with that, I'm going to introduce something that we're really, really excited about. Safe harbor, of course. A lot of statements we're going to make are going to be forward-looking. Please do not make any commercial or purchasing decisions based on this information. All right, but now on to the exciting parts. We've, if you haven't met me, maybe let's start there. So I head up technology. I'm SVP of technology for Reltio. I've been about 25 years of experience in cloud, broadly speaking, cloud, in security, and in the data spaces. And in my career, I haven't seen this much excitement about one particular topic. Maybe when the cloud came out, the word cloud came out, it sort of put a label on distributed compute, and it really broke into the mainstream commercial, sort of the forefront of the conversation at that point. I think we are witnessing something very similar with AI ML and the fact that ChatGPT helped AI ML sort of break into the spotlight and really made it the main conversation, at dinner tables, and sort of definitely in professional venues across the board. So for us, we've been working on making these data management challenges simpler using AI machine learning at Reltio now for a while. And it's really exciting to see, things that we've been working on now sort of being talked about in the mainstream, but also the number of questions and interests we're seeing from customers is at an all-time high. So very, very exciting topic for all of those reasons. So the plan for the next hour or so is I'll walk you through a few slides. We'll talk about this particular feature that's in early access right now, but I also wanted to start sharing sort of our Reltio's mindset around AI ML and sort of our broader approach to the space and where we think sort of data management is going to evolve into in the next few years. So with that, I'm sure you've sort of seen us lay out our capabilities, sort of these core capabilities, supported by a number of foundational elements, whether that's being able to deliver through multiple clouds, certified security with all the relevant sort of seals of trust, such as SOC 2, HIPAA, high trust, and so on. And in the middle, sort of these individual capabilities that we can combine in different ways to be able to deliver to your particular industry or for your particular use case, or most importantly, the business outcome that you're trying to drive. And that's in the core, those capabilities is where we think that each and every one of those capabilities over time is going to be impacted by AI, machine learning, by models, varying all the way from, very simple sort of linear regression models all the way to large language models. But there is applicability. In fact, I was at a conference last week, and McKinsey shared a point of view that they think somewhere between 70 to 90% of all data management tasks will be dramatically changed or improved by the advent of AI ML. So that's a pretty bold prediction, and I think their timeline was about 10 years or so. Here's one example of, we always ask why, right? There's one angle to this is AI ML is cool now. It's in the news. There's a lot of buzz about it. That's great. But the question we ask is, how can we apply it in meaningful ways so that we can make a dramatic shift or dramatic improvement to all of your daily lives, right? Or your teams' daily lives. And so here's one example thread, or here's one thread that we are following as an example here, which will consistently influence our roadmap in multiple ways. And so one of the goals that we put forth for ourselves is we've seen already that customers who've implemented Reltio are already seeing a 5 to 10x improvement in their data steward productivity, which is great. But the question we are asking ourselves is, how do we get 10x more so that end-to-end, by implementing data management in the way that Reltio sort of envisions it, that we should be able to give your companies a total of 50 to 100x improvement in data steward productivity, right, for that workflow. So here's an example. Today, some of our best customers are able to get about 70 to 75 matches a day on average. That's what a data steward can resolve. And these are, the ambiguous matches that manually have to be chased down. So how can we automate that process to the point where the human is definitely in the loop, but in a way that they are much more in an advisory capacity and not have to spend so much time sort of doing the tie-breaking work. Next piece, again, this one is about scale. So as we get more and more decisions that need to be made by data stewards, there is a question of how can we streamline that workflow? Can we create better UIs that are really designed to solve for that bulk approval or sort of bulk inspection of potential matches, if you will, right? And then finally, if there is a very small percentage of potential matches that are left over that do need further human inspection, how can we present that information as maybe context information around those matches as succinctly as possible, so that that decision can be made faster? So you can imagine that if we string these capabilities together over time, a lot of them assisted by AI technologies, that we can get to a whole order of magnitude more efficiency and make our data stewards so much more powerful. So we've started on this journey, right? We've taken our second step, I would say, along this journey, and that first area where that we've sort of solved as that step is entity resolution, right? So entity resolution is a process that all of you are very familiar with, but how can we get to, again, in the far distance, as few rules as we can and make that entity resolution process out of the box be very, very capable, so that you can, you start with an entity type, and the resolution comes as a model sort of associated with that entity, so that you can put your data to work as quickly as possible. That's kind of the idea. And we'll walk you through our implementation of it. I apologize. There's a huge number of folks on screen. Let me just move you to the side. There you go. So what we've introduced as pre-trained ML models for Match IQ this is our second iteration of working with models in this space. The first iteration, Match IQ 1.0, was about 3 years ago. And a lot of our focus was in enabling each of our customers to train a model from scratch, right? And our learning from that is it takes a lot of input to get to a model that is meaningful. So our current iteration is that, why don't we give you a starting point where a pre-trained model can get you a large percentage of the way there, and perhaps be able to do that without adding any other match rules. And then additional rules can be added to get to the level of precision that you are used to with Reltio. So that's the sort of fast, simple, accurate matching piece, right? Again, we talked about efficiency, right? So eliminating hundreds of person hours of task that is required by data stewards. But I think it's mostly, it's even more so about empowering data stewards, right? The time that we free up from them can be used perhaps towards research and towards that very small percent of cases that are really, really hard to resolve by a machine. And this feature is out. It's in early access right now for our life sciences customers. So what I'm going to do is give you a quick demo. This probably is the fastest demo in the world. And then we can sort of look at the roadmap as this set of features would sort of evolve over time. Go back here to the screen. So at the highest level, the way this feature manifests itself is to show up as an additional rule or additional model. I guess as you go, right here I am, let me explain where I am. So I am within a particular entity, and I am in the match subscreen there. And in the past, we only had this panel which had match rules, and you list number of rules here. Now you will see another additional panel that says match IQ models. And in this case, we have our HCP model that is enabled on this particular tenant. You can click on the description, and it will give you a little bit more information about the attributes that we, in the presence of these attributes, and depending on how much data there is in these attributes, the model will be able to create better outcomes than if these attributes are missing or not high quality in terms of fidelity. You can also click into this model here, and that takes you to a pretty straightforward edit capability. Should look very familiar to anyone who's edited matches before. And really, it gives you two options. It says this match is already enabled. This rule is already enabled. You can either use the output of that rule to automatically merge the match, or you can create potential matches, which you can then resolve via sort of data steward workflows. And so the simplest application of this could be that you say, and the confidence of this rule, for that particular match is on a scale between 0 and 1. So you can say, for example, if a rule is 0.9 to 1, which means very, very high confidence that this is a match, you want to create an automatically merged profile out of that. You can add another action. You could say, for anything that is a little bit lower than that, so let's say 0.5 to 0.89, we want to create a potential match, and so on. And then you save this rule and quickly run a rebuild match table, and that sort of puts the rule into action. The output of this is, for example, here's a profile that shows potential matches. And right here, it shows up as a match IQ rule. You can click on that. It shows you the relevance, and you can go more into detail within that profile to then sort of do a comparison. If there's obviously multiple potential matches here, they show up as a table and with the match IQ icon enabled. The other thing is to understand what match IQ is up to is you can select a particular entity type, HCP in this case, and you can find anything that has been influenced by match IQ, and you can then select the particular rule under match IQ that had a role to play in any of these profiles. So picking one, for example, again, sort of gives you, takes you straight to that particular, the reason for creating that particular potential match. So that's as far as the demo is concerned. Where we're going with this is this particular model for life sciences that's in early access now. We expect this particular model to go into GA in the next release. But really, this is our first pre-trained model, and what we expect is there to be a whole family of models, and these models will be available for particular entity types, and you can enable these models to really get started with very, very little effort. As you saw, we've sort of abstracted away any of the bells and whistles that are sort of internal to the model and really exposed in terms of workflow. How do you want to interact with the output of the model depending on the confidence, right? So keeping it very, very simple. But we do think that over time, we'll be able to give you multiple models that solve for a very particular vertical, a very particular entity type. And that will continue to roll out for sort of from here on forward. We're also working on explainability. So, some of what you saw was sort of the confidence around the match. We'll also let you open up the box and really walk through the different factors that the model considered to get to a decision. And we expect to have that out by the first release of next year. We're also working on localized model training. So right now, this model is sort of pre-built, right? But we also want the model to get more and more adept at your particular data as your data stewards are taking action. And so that localized model training is coming early access in 24.1, and by .2, we expect that to be out in GA.
Great. And go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a few questions, and some of them are being answered, it looks like, but let's just make sure. So is Match IQ available to all customers? And does it come with a license, or is it an add-on?
So Match IQ is in early access right now. It will be in GA as of 23.3 for this particular life sciences model, and we'll be introducing more models over time. As to the licensing point, Venki or Suchin, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I've already responded, Ansh.
Okay.
I mean, so in terms of licensing, if a customer is licensed our base package Reltio in the last roughly a year or so, or renewed, then Match IQ is included as part of that subscription. But the best would be to check with your account executive to confirm. And also to clarify, I think the pre-trained machine learning models that we are providing, starting with HCP, that is currently in early access. Match IQ has been available as a capability for some time. But previously, what it involved was for you to actually train your own models using a active learning process that you had to go through yourself. Now we are dramatically simplifying that with making these domain-specific models available to you, which are trained on a vast amount of data. So they come with a certain level of accuracy right off the gate. So you don't have to go through that tedious process of training your models yourself.
Great. So can we have more details on how this works in the back end? So this is going to be a question that all Reltio customers ask to get more confidence on the matching using ML.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So a machine learning model is essentially a statistical model, right? And once the model is trained, there are sort of two distinct phases, right? The training phase and the actual inference or query phase. So the training phase, we use third-party data and sort of publicly available data sets to be able to get the model to tell us if one HCP is similar or the same or matches with the other HCP or not. Once this model is trained, then it sort of is queried by the match process. And I think this is where another sort of behind the scenes innovation, where we were able to take this notion of our comparators, which in the past were sort of internal to the match process within Reltio. And we were able to make it so that our model, which is running as a microservice within our environment, is now queried by the comparator. So the comparator becomes a much more flexible thing that can talk to multiple models. And the output of that model then sort of continues down the same match path as we had before. So in a sense, you can think of this as an augmented match path, but the model is another microservice that's sort of running within our environment.
How does the match rule continue to learn?
Right now, what we have, and this is what I was talking about, sort of the pre-trained versus localized model training, right? So right now, the model is trained by us, and we push that out to you for sort of, in domain-specific ways, for domain-specific use. We would train another model, sort of the current setup, and make that available as version 3, version 4, right, over time. That is what is out right now. And what we're working on is this ability to continuously train a localized model, which means once you deploy a model, it starts learning from all the actions that your data stewards are performing, right? So that training, sort of in context training, is the piece that will that sort of shows up towards the second release of 2024.
So in one of your slides, it was mentioned that it will learn by reading data. Does that mean that the data will be read by Reltio?
Not right now. Right now, the pre-trained model is already in place, right? And it's not reading any additional data. Over time, as we sort of work towards the localized models that are contained within your tenant, and they learn off of the actions of the data stewards, then they'll have access to data steward action, but again, within that context, right? So that's why we're very, very deliberate about introducing this technology and working with early access customers who will sort of influence strongly the parameters of what data can be accessed by the model and the data steward actions that can be then fed into the model. But that's the essence of machine learning, right? It needs to be fed off of a data to get better, of your data over time to get better.
So and this might be for Venki, but what other entity types do you have on your roadmap?
I can take that. So right now we're working on HCO and HCP. The next set is in generalized individual and generalized organization models, and then sort of a roadmap from there forward. But those are the 4 that we're right now focused on.
Okay. What all data sources were used to train this model that Reltio is offering?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Ansh, I can answer that. So we have used some of the commonly used data sources that many of our customers use, like NPI, DA, and some of the other open sources data sources. That was a baseline that we have used for training this model.
Great. And then Sarah asked a question, but I think it was answered, but I'll read it anyways. So will pre-built models be available by entity type or industry, or will they be trained for different attributes? And then Suchin mentioned Pre-built
Yeah.
models are available by entity types. We do have plans to extend this to be more generic so that some of the models can be used for any industries. For example, individual model for matching person data. So I don't know if Sarah, if you had additional questions around that, but hopefully that helped.
Yeah, I mean, I can add to that, right? This is the entity level is where we're training, where we're sort of creating these models right now and training them. Over time, we think this notion of using these models for a simpler, faster type of solution that will pervade a lot of data management. As an example, when you are ingesting data, right now you explicitly map the source and the particular attribute types or the particular entities to sort of the what they are. For example, this particular field is a social security number, this particular field is a last name, and so on. So all of that mapping assumes that you as a human are identifying what that particular field is. And that is something that a very small, tiny little model can deduce fairly reliably, right? So that's an example of like an attribute specific model that can be used in a different place within our NDM system, for example, right? So we'd start seeing little models sort of pop up all over, and I think the way they actually manifest themselves is something that was done in the past with manual effort. It just becomes easier to do and doesn't need a lot of knobs and to be turned to get to the outcome. Yeah.
So Sarah mentioned that's helpful. Thanks. I would be interested in the general versions outside of healthcare.
Right.
Once that's available. Can you describe the pre and post scenarios of day in a life of developer steward, after launch of pre-trained machine learning models?
Right. So I think the
Good
first
question. I like
it's a great question, right? And it's a great way of sort of working backwards from the outcome. So the first piece is the need for static rules, right? So especially when a new entity type is being set up, a lot of time is spent by our professional services or by partners in sort of getting that match tuning process right. Yeah. And so that can be multiple weeks at sometimes. And so the first big value milestone is, can we get you out of the gate with a model without having to go through the continuous match tuning process, right? What the rule set is doing, can we encapsulate that in a model that sort of gets you that 60, 70, 80% of accuracy right out of the gate, right? The focus then can be on what else, what static rules can be then added to get that accuracy to that 90, 100%, as close to 100% as possible, right? That's sort of the first big change. The second is that over time, feedback we get from data stewards is this, they have to do the same thing over and over and over again, right? And so as these models will learn about a particular sort of data steward or data steward team, they will take away, sort of automatically be able to make those suggestions without that level of inspection being required by the data steward, right? So that's sort of your when you're confident, as you're starting to work with these models, you'd want to put them in advisory mode, not in automatically merge mode. That's how we imagine it. So the need for inspection, that goes down dramatically. Now, if you couple that with our vision of being able to then in bulk approve, our models will tell you, here's the reason why the model is suggesting a particular, potential match. And we think that humans will get very good at just at bulk looking at that and just approving that. The third stage is, once you have confidence in these models and their performance, and as your data stewards start trusting these models, then we can move to the auto merge scenario, where even that inspection can become sampling, as opposed to being able to, having to inspect every one of those potential matches. So this is just in the potential match area, but hopefully that gives you a window into how we see this evolving over the next 2 to 3 years.
That's great.
If I can
So
add
one-
if I can add couple of other things, right, to Ansh, what you said,
Mhm.
in terms of the before after. Think of the pre-built match models or the machine learning based models for matching in combination with our velocity pack, the standardized data models that we are delivering. The combination of that delivers tremendous amount of acceleration and speed, right, for customers, because you are not trying to create your own data models. You're starting
Right.
with the Reltio provided standardized data models that are informed by many implementations as well as industry standards that exist. So take HCP as an example. And once your data is standardized and the models that we build and deliver are based on millions of data steward actions that are taken on that kind of data. So you're right off the bat getting a lot more accuracy, right? So instead of having to create a model and create a matched rule, trying different match rules, and then coming up with a final one that you feel confident to deploy to production, now all you have to care about is, get your data in the right format and load them into Reltio, and your data models are provided and your match rules are provided, and right off the bat you will start seeing results, right? How data will get matched and merged together. Before you're getting to the merge decision, if you want to still stay in the potential match realm and you want to do some verification, that is possible. And even for the lower confidence models, what it provides is a second level verification. So assume a scenario where you have rules that you've defined for very specific strict matching criteria. The machine learning based recommendations, the match IQ recommendations, can act as a second level verification. So a data steward can act with higher confidence on those matches that are suggested by rules as well as suggested by a machine learning model, right? And then once confidence builds, like Ansh said, then you can flip completely into more of the automated process, or go to a sampling mode and then to a fully automated mode. So all of this is in service of the productivity. And showed you a slide about going from 75 match resolutions per data steward to 750 or maybe even higher, right? That 10x productivity gain, that is the before and after.
Great. And we have some more questions coming in. Do you guys have any other stuff to present, or before I get to these questions, or should we just keep going?
Well, I think the discussion is the most important part of these community events. So why don't we take the questions? I have a couple of sort of broader points to make around our approach to AI/ML, but that can wait.
Okay. What if our data model is different than Reltio's data model? What if our data model is different than Reltio's data model that was used for training the ML model?
I can take that.
Yeah.
Ansh showed this in one of the screen, that when you click on the model, it shows you the list of attribute that we have used to train this. So currently it will work only for that attribution. If you have a slightly different version of it, or a model it's slightly different, we will provide the mapping capability in future, where you will be able to say that F name or L name is my first name and last name. So you will still be able to use, but in current version, you have to follow the model attribution.
And I think that's actually a really important point, Suchin, right? Because where we have our match IQ sort of original capability, which allows you to train models, regardless of how different these models are. Your data model is, sorry, and now AI model, data model, we should talk about them separately. So, so that capability allows you to train on your data model, regardless of how different it is from any pre-trained model, right? The trade-off is, with a pre-trained model, now we made certain assumptions, and as Venki pointed out, those assumptions are made based on the expertise that we've collected over the past 10 years on what industry-specific data models look like, right? So these things work together, and our learning was that, and that's part of the reason why we are introducing HCP and HCO, because they're very specific, industry specific, and combined with our standard data model, they allow us to give you that acceleration. That being said, we are in early access. We're working with several customers right now. And if you want us to look at your particular data model and sort of work through, what kind of AI model would be applicable to that, please reach out to us. We're very happy to have that conversation.
Great. Are there any thoughts of split rules going forward to permit a more aggressive implementation of auto rules.
Suchin, that's probably better coming from you.
Sorry, can you elaborate on that? I didn't understand. Are we talking about basically using a model to kind of, suggest a rule? Or are we talking about using machine learning based matching for merging, auto merge?
Yeah, I could try to clarify a little bit, Chris.
Yep.
This is Mark Roark. Yeah, it's just, with any of these things, it's also almost like optimizations in a way. You either go too far, too little, and I know that you have the kind of the guideline between automatically merge and kind of review. But at some point, data stewards taking activities with these things, and if you go, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things, we're going to go too much, too little, and that's the whole reality of this. So, is there any thought to, like, well, we've done too much, to do something with facilitating data stewards or splitting things out? I understand that may be used for the rule going forward, but anything to kind of help them identify what may want to be split out based on split activities. It's probably not a primary focus, I can understand, but it's always been a problem for us that there's no, like, you change a rule, nothing splits out afterwards.
Right. Yeah, got it. Yeah, that's a very good point, and we are currently working on that, looking at the split activities, just like we are going to look at the data stewards merge activity. If they look at a pair and decide that it's a merge, based on that pattern, we will basically incorporate that or extend the model and say, hey, you have been merging this kind of pairs. Would you like us to kind of take care of that automatically? Similarly, unmerge is or split is a very important decision, right? If something was split, that means user did not like how it was merged. So that will be passed on, and we will extend the model in the future version that Ansh talked about, where we will learn from the user activity.
Okay, and is there any thought to doing things that have already been merged together, like with it, so that like it'll not do the same thing going forward, whether they split it, but for whatever that part of the corpus that's already been merged, and then maybe they'd want to split it. Is there any thought of going there? And again, I wouldn't think it would be initially, but just as have there been discussions around that?
Yes. So we do have plans, and basically looking at some of the already merged records and see if it follows the same pattern for splitting. So go after that and point out at least, these are the records that you have merged which follows the same pattern, right? Okay. So point it out and let you basically decide you want to take care of them now, or those are for whatever reason different category of merges that should not be touched, right? Because unmerge is very sort of sensitive task really, so yeah, we are thinking about that too.
Thank you.
And I apologize. I was talking through the roadmap, but I realized that my screen was not up. So fix that now, and it gives you a little bit of a view into the way we're sort of stepping through the sequencing this work. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, that's great.
This is Chandra here. Sorry, I joined late, but I have a quick question. If it was covered, sorry. So for we also, a life science customer basically. We do have some of the domains, the entity types that we custom created as custom domains long ago, like for example, study site and all. We introduced almost we've been having for almost 3 years or more than that. So now I see that you're coming with the same domains and with the velocity packs, right? Which is great. So if I have custom domains and you're bringing these domains in the velocity packs, they come with L3 having those 3 domains as well, right? So when it comes to this machine learning, how it works, do we need to switch to your your model, with the velocity pack, or to get the benefit out of this kind of machine learning, or can you extend the same to the domains that are already there that we created?
Yeah, so let's have that. Let us have a look at your models, because the training of the model has been, or the intent is to sort of now that we're standardized on these velocity pack based data models, that AI models would be trained off of that structure. At the same time, we expect most of the relevant fields to be the same, although maybe the description is different and so on. So work with us. We definitely want to figure out how to be able to make these models effective for existing customers, and if that needs a little bit of custom tweaking, I'm sure we can figure that out. In terms of infrastructure and sort of architecture, we have the flexibility to be able to push out specific models, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Sounds good. Yeah, just we will definitely we are actually talking to your team, like the customer success manager and everybody, the sales team and all, with between Velocity Pack and what we have right now, and how to get the benefit out of Velocity Pack without having too much of disturbance with our current setup.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll follow up, Chandra, with you.
Well,
Thank you,
yeah, thanks, Chandra. That was always great questions. Will the ML model eventually replace rules?
So I think the jury is out on that one, right? I think any models have to get to the level of precision that you as our customers are used to with the static rules right now. And different use cases will have different sensitivity to type 1 and type 2 errors. So personally, my view is that the safest combination for an MDM type application is for a model to then have a layer of rules that ensure that there are guardrails around the model. And that, combined with the transparency on why the model is making certain decisions, I think we'll be able to get to a point where there are very, very few rules required. But I do feel like there's a combination approach for sort of high precision applications is probably the best right now.
Yeah, and Ansh, if I can add to that.
Of course.
So the way I see it, right? I mean, and the way we have designed the system, right? So there are a rule-based match engine and there's a machine learning-based match engine. Today, with Reltio's implementation, both these engines work in parallel. So basically, they don't get in way of each other. And I see that there will always be a case where you have a very specific scenario that you want to use for your matching, right? For example, first name is same, last name is same, address is same, all of that thing, and there is this ID that you're passing from your source system that you have already used to resolve your matches. You want to use that ID for merging, right? You don't want to basically train the model to learn about that ID and get to that maturity level about that specific scenario. Instead, you can just plug in that one simple deterministic rule and just take care of all those matches. So I think there is always going to be cases where rule-based matching is going to be around, and it should be, and that's how we have designed it. Both this engine work in parallel and evaluate independently.
Yeah, that's good. Will the machine learn from the stewards doing their research for merging through the Reltio UI? So there used to be a research tab in the UI. Not sure if that's still there, but
yeah, the research tab is not there, but there is definitely we're discussing how could we bring a research tab that is powered by large language models, etc., that can provide a much more sort of contextual view of, it's like what happens with data stewards today is when they get to a point where the system's no longer, helpful with a potential match. Let's say they'll go out to Google or they'll go out to other data sources to really do that research to figure, make a decision, make a hard decision. So the question is, can we bring some of that research ability to within the interface, and where it's curated enough that it allows our data stewards to make that decision faster? So that is definitely being discussed right now. If that is of interest, or if you have specific views on how that should work, that'd be fantastic input as we shape that feature.
Yeah, bringing that research tab back is really going to be very helpful, because that's one of our selling points to our internal customers.
Got it. That's great.
That being gone, we were kind of in a bit awkward situation.
That's really good to know, Chandra. I mean, not that you were in an awkward situation, but the fact that there was value, we could fix it.
So one another thing, as actually I posted here, will you be able to share those, the third party or public data sources you've been using for, training different models for different domains, by domain?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we'll share the names of the third-party data providers that we have used. Like I mentioned, NPI, DEA, AMA, AOA, some of those source system. But we'll list.
And
yeah, but
we can add that as metadata.
We are not using just the third-party sources, so we will be able to share some of that. But we are also using the data steward actions in an anonymized and generalized way from different customers that we work with. So those specifics we cannot share, but we'll definitely be able to share the third-party sources. So the method that we are using is a combination of working back from what a data steward does, and they are combining multiple slices of information, right? That comes together. Some of it is source data from their own systems. Some of it is the third-party data, like an NPI or DEA kind of data sets. And it gets combined in specific ways to create a profile. And then multiple profiles could itself get merged together into creating a single consolidated profile. So we are sort of creating each of those slices of data, and the machine learning models are built on that.
Sounds good. Great. Thank you, Vinky.
Are you able to take into account like country specificity? Sorry that I haven't yet provided examples, but what about local languages?
So we will, and that was again the vision of having a number of these models, because for us, the closer we can be to a particular vertical, to a particular use case, and to a particular geography, the better outcomes we can drive for you. So over time, we fully expect, for example, the HCP model that's applicable to the US versus an HCP model that's applicable to the UK, and so on and so forth. I think there is also a whole other work stream that has to do with fuzzy matching on non-Latin character sets. And that is sort of, non-Latin languages, how do we enable fuzzy matching like we have right now for English and Latin character sets. So we expect that sort of model to play a role in Chinese language or Japanese or other sort of non-English characters in the future.
Right. And I feel like the next two questions have been answered, but let me ask one. Will the machine learning at some point be guides to kickstart based on questions to data stewards or actions based on conventional rules? You guys kind of mentioned that, right?
Yeah. I mean, that you can do. You that's part of our Match IQ capability that you can do today, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How are these models shared across development, test, and prod environments?
The
Sujan,
model appears. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Sujan.
Yeah. So basically, it's in early access, and right now, what we have done is basically these models are deployed on every environment. So it's a centralized model. Basically, you can just point to that and take advantage of that model and just run on your data. So we don't need your data. We don't need anything from your tenant. It is just basically using the model. It's the same model which is deployed in all different environments. And just want to clarify that right now it's in early access. So we are in the process of deploying it in all environments. Right now it is available in some of the environments which we are working with our early access customers. Yeah, to answer your question, it's a centralized model that will be available, will be accessible to all customers in those respective environments. So there is no need to kind of, for you to do the porting or migration to different environments.
So earlier, you guys mentioned using rules as guardrails. How did you decide that those guardrails were for the pre-trained models, or are these black box models?
So as Suchin sort of alluded to this, right? So right now, both the AI models and the rule-based matching, they're running in parallel. And our intent is that you should be able to see the output of both of those paths, right? The black box nature of the AI model, what we're using behind the scenes are tree-based models, which have very high level of explainability. So by the time this goes GA, we will be exposing to you the decision structure that went into the model making that decision, right? So the black box piece will not, should not get in the way of sort of answering the question or answering the question why the model made a decision or why is this match different from this other match. Does that help? I'm not sure if I directly answered the question.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'll let somebody respond to that first.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's good. Good.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to add that what we have done basically, in our velocity pack, we do have a set of match rules that we ship with the velocity packs, right? And those match rules are designed, by the way, based on our expertise on these domains. So what Ansh was trying to say earlier was that we have used those rule set as a guideline, those instructions to kind of train this model, right? So we have not picked all 200 attributes for training. Instead, we have looked at those match rules that we have seen and used for 20, 30 years as a starting point, and then basically trained on top of that to make it better.
Right, from an attribute selection point of view, yeah.
Yes.
Got it, yeah.
So will a rule-based static rule have the ability to take ML suggestions as input in the rule and then refine as need be?
Not right now. That's right now the ML model is running as a rule in parallel with all the other rule sets, right?
Okay.
But that's an interesting thought, and something that we've talked about internally. I guess watch this space as that thinking evolves. There are certain use cases where that makes sense, but our thinking was we want to keep the rule making or the decision making process as transparent as possible. So right now, having very clear execution path for the ML models versus the static rules, that's what we have sort of put out there right now.
I think the last question, but you never know. In order to take advantage of the upcoming individual and organizational models, do we need to separate individual and organization entities, or can it be applied to generalized party or customer entities?
I think, yeah, at this point of time, those are separate models. Like we mentioned earlier, right? So we are starting with a domain-specific entity type, which is healthcare provider or professional, and kind of make it a little more generic, because HCPs are people, person. So you can make a more generic model out of it, which can be used for various domains and industries. And if you take that one step further, or a little more generic than that, it becomes basically any party model, right? So we can get to that level at some point of time, but at this point of time, the plan is to basically HCP, HCO, and then make more generic model in those respective entity types, and look at the opportunity of kind of making it even more generic to be at the party level.
Okay, so beginning in 2024, we'd be looking at really needing to have separate individual and organization entities in order to take advantage of it.
That is true.
Okay.
But at the same time, if you want to share more details on that, we can have a look at it. If it is something that we can just kind of create a generic, a more generic model right now, we'll be kind of interested to look at that, your requirement, and see if we can consider that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to solve the party specific model at some point. And the question is, how much decomposition can we do in the back end? And obviously, we'd prefer, not to impose any work on any of our customers. So I would say that problem we're still sort of working through right now. And we have sort of clear answer for individual and organization. How about we come back and sort of share with you our approach towards party? I wouldn't sort of make an assumption right now. I think it's pretty early in the game.
Yeah, we're just 6 weeks into our implementation, so it's possible that we could change the way that we're doing it. So, yeah. Yeah.
So you guys made us work today. I really appreciate that. That was awesome.
Great.
And Ansh, if you had some last parting thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I also wanted to share at a higher level, like beyond just entity resolution or match, at a very high level, what I hear from CDOs and CDAOs and teams on, their thoughts on what will it take for these AI ML models to gain enough trust that they would be accepted into the mainstream, especially for precision applications such as MDM, right? And these four sort of themes come up. First theme is around reproducibility. Like if you're talking to a model, giving a certain input, you want the same output every time. And if it's different, then you want transparency, or you want to know, why was this decision different? Is it a different model? Did the model parameters change? What changed? And then that sort of explainability is very, very critical. And what I hear from CDOs is, look, we've spent the last 5 years making our data program, our landscape overall into a glass box, into that being as transparent as possible. And all these little black boxes are appearing from a machine learning point of view that are just messing with the plan. So explainability, very, very important. The third is obviously around compliance. As sort of professionals in the enterprise data space, you're building these models and you're figuring out what data to use to train these models and so on. And a lot of the legal framework for this hasn't caught up, right? So the European Union is at the forefront of figuring out what those legal limits would be for data sharing. And there's obviously, all of us have contractual limits on how much data can be shared, especially cross-customer. And so having clarity on that, to some of the questions that were asked, that's a very, very important property. And then the fourth one, which is obviously very important to us, is performance, both in terms of latency and then being able to deliver the service to you at a cost point that makes sense to everybody, right? Those sort of parameters, those four stand out as important. And we are taking those four into account as our guardrails as we sort of think through all the different exciting things that can be delivered with AI ML. And I didn't want to leave close out where I started, which is many, many different aspects of data management will be influenced by AI. And we've started down the entity resolution path, and I shared a roadmap with you that the team's working on. But we'll see similar effort in ingestion and sort of modeling of data as that data starts streaming into our MDM platform. Automated mapping, because our sort of canonical model is fairly flexible. And so if we can classify data coming in, we can auto map that to a large extent, again, alleviating that effort. Obviously, quality or data quality capability is out right now. You will see enhancements to that as we will start detecting anomalies in the time series that are already out there. But also working backwards from there more into the data prep space and feature engineering. And as you're getting this data ready to be loaded into the MDM system, lots of interesting applications there. And finally, governance, data change requests, and so on, just making those workflows much easier than they are today, and mitigating that risk, but doing it in an intelligent manner. So we hope this is exciting for you as it is for us, and we're making very strategic investments in these areas, and hope to share with all of you in future conversations.
Wow, just wow. Thank you, Ansh, Suchin, Venki, and thank you to the community for coming to another really great community show. Lots of great questions. Please take the survey at the end. Your feedback is very important to me as I take that and use that for future shows and try to make these better. So thank you everyone for coming. And we are excited. Ansh, thank you. Wow, you really made this super exciting. So thank you everyone. Take care, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Take care,
Take care.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.